welcome. This is the April 6, 2022 meeting of the Stockbridge Cultural Council. We're just going to start with a roll call for attendance so that we can establish a quorum, okay? Barbara Cooperman,
Yes, present.
Janet Egelhofer,
Yeah.
Selena Lamb, I don't think she's on yet, Terry Moore,
Here.
Maureen O'Hanlon,
Yes.
Isabel Rose, Andrea Scholler,
Here.
Joe Chinetti,
Present.
Judith Wilkinson, present. Rena Zarowski. There. Yeah, okay. All right, this is our so-called brainstorming meeting. So we're going to start with a little bit of a recap on observations of our last voting cycle and the applications and grants, and just kind of establish maybe what some of our observations are and comments about who applied and what we might do to actually increase applications, what we might do to increase Stockbridge participation, and whether there's a kind of a fresh way to kind of open up the types of applications that we saw. Okay, so I just went back and took a look at, as you know, we had 38 applications. 21 of those were people in the performing arts, largely theater and music. We granted 26, 12 of the grantees were in the performing arts, 4 were in science, 2 were in social science, 2 were in health, 2 were in literature, and 4 were in other, and that was the sculpture, the artist residency, etc. So one observation is that we're very, we're inviting and we're receiving a lot of performing arts, but if you kind of think about, and I'm going to read you an email from Lisa Simmons at Mass Cultural Council when I kind of probed exactly what, you know, the Cultural Council, the kind of projects that we could do. She actually was very, well, on behalf of Mass Cultural Council, very expansive. For example, she said that she broke it into arts, humanities, and science. And she said the definition includes the study, pursuit, performance, exhibition, and appreciation of cultural activities in the broadest sense. Arts refer to the creation of works in the crafts and performing, visual, media, folk, design, literary, and interdisciplinary arts. Humanities include things like history, social studies, philosophy, criticism, and literature. And science, she mentions, she said, science is limited to its cultural, interpretive, and educational expression and refers to types of learning that deal with nature, science, and technology in ways that, that explain how they relate to people's lives. And then she goes on to say some organizations that conduct this type of activity include aquariums, botanical gardens, nature centers, natural history museums, planetariums, and science centers. And then she also said that that you do not need a large crowd of people to satisfy the public benefit requirement. Whenever possible, activities funded by the local cultural councils should be available to the public or community by exhibit, performance, demonstration, reading, or other means. And they do not need to be in person. Virtual and remote programming are also effective ways to make the programming available to the public. So So if you look at, the grants we received, the grants we made, the applications we received, the grants we made, and this very broad definition, what would you think,
I was curious because you said 2 of the grants that we gave out last time were in health.
Yeah.
What were those 2? I don't recall.
These are my categories, so.
I know.
Hold on, let me see.
Yeah.
What did I call it?
There was like an Alzheimer's
Oh,
film.
Alzheimer's.
Arts and
Very good.
recovery.
Acoustic memories, and there was a third that I can't read my writing on, but that's
There
what
was
I
a third
called
one?
health. Suicide,
Arts and recovery.
yeah.
Arts and recovery, yeah.
Right. They were really arts grants, but they were related to health. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Alzheimer's one, I wouldn't say was so much of an arts grant, but
Which one was that in?
the Alzheimer's one, I mean, it was a film with lectures about Alzheimer's, I don't know. But the arts and recovery is definitely an arts grant.
And the literature, for example, one was that we didn't grant this, but the Hilltown Families, it was a newsletter, remember? And then the 2 that we did grant were the Mary Pope, and then there was a coloring book one. So, I mean, in terms of the applications we're getting, obviously we're granting from that subset. And then, this really broad definition from Mass Cultural Council. Do you think we should be pounding the pavement to get more? I mean, there's no photography, there's no poetry, it's kind of narrow. And another observation that some of us made is that if you look at other local cultural councils' press releases, we are funding many of the same projects. So, I mean, it feels like there's an opportunity, I'm not sure how to realize it, but, is it that people are unaware of the cultural council and the application process? Is it that when they hear cultural council, they think theater, dance? I don't know, but I mean, certainly there's a lot of things that could be funded that we never see.
I think you're probably right. Some of the small organizations, it's not surprising that a lot of us give grants to big organizations like the Fall Festival at Shakespeare and Company, which is a very worthy organization. But they know what the Cultural Council is. So small photography, something or other, might not be aware of our existence and the fact that they would be, looked upon with the same kind of credence that, we give to some of the larger organizations.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry, how is the word spread on this? I mean, it's been in existence for a while because I'm obviously very new at this, but is there a way to reach, to send out we're accepting,
newsletter or some sort of,
something.
a little short of advertising, but some sort of way to get the message out there to a greater
Something.
audience or constituency, right?
Whether it's in
Yeah, well,
the Eagle or whether it's.
A press release hasn't been, I mean, in the past, under the previous chair, she never did press
Yeah.
releases. So a lot of the other towns do press releases. So I would say that the Stockbridge Cultural Council's been kind of under the radar. So that might be one of the reasons.
Carol Owens has a newsletter.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely that.
Probably should be in there.
Yeah, definitely
You
that.
know, if we have always given, sort of 26 was the number this year, is that right, out of 38 apps? Is that what you?
Yeah, yep.
Is that about right, for, what we've done looking back over our shoulder a few years, 5 years, 10 years? Have we always given a lot of applications for a sort of smaller amount versus, spreading it out to as many people that we can instead of giving, five or 10 grants with a larger amount. I'm wondering if that ratio has been similar.
Andrea, can you?
Yeah, you have the longest
Do you know?
institutional history
Yeah,
here.
yeah, we're really suffering from lack of.
Well, I can only, I think that it's pretty close to what I think we had more applications in the prior year. And I think because of COVID, let's see, was this, I can't remember which one. Yeah, so but I can't really speak to what happened beyond that. But I think it's what we did is pretty much, the average. Like it looks like we did 32 applications and 18 grants in the prior year.
Oh,
Okay.
well, 18 versus 26.
Releases from other cultural councils. There's a pretty long list.
There is a long list.
Yeah.
However, the number of things that, again, this is my own categorization, but the number of things that we granted to Stockbridge, I think we granted 5 Stockbridge artists or a Stockbridge venue. So that's 5 out of.
Out of how many from Stockbridge who applied?
Yeah. How many applied?
I think we probably gave to everyone who applied from Stockbridge.
Okay, well, that gives us some information about who we need to reach.
Yes, yes. Yes, I had just 5 out of, 26. So there's opportunity there. But back to your point, Joe, when we voted, we made a decision to give it to a lot of people because it's valuable to them and they can check a box and they have Massachusetts Cultural Council funding. But now that I've seen these other press releases and that we're all funding the same people, I'm at least less compelled by that. And I think there is an argument. I mean, when you're giving people 200, there could be, maybe people do know about us and they know that we give $200. And
I guess that's where I was just bringing up it gives you a little pause if you think about it, that a lot of these applicants are going to a few different towns. And I've made me think of the idea that it's sort of, they all need money and they're all good causes. So let me just preface it by that, but they also may have someone that is in an administrative, small part of their job is to fill out these applications. And so they're able to do that and that helps them.
Right.
Whereas an artist that has a project that's going to write up a proposal and take on a project of a certain size or magnitude, it's barely worth the $200 to write up to spend 4 hours writing up a serious proposal or 3 hours writing up something that's barely worth their time these days. So that's why I thought about first to get more money, which was what you
Right.
did. And then also if there's a couple of ways you could do that where you have still a similar format where you give a lot of people a small amount of money, but then there's a certain amount of set aside for one sort of larger project. I don't know if you can divvy it that way, but it's something to think about. I think we would have to sort of hash that out over the course of a year or so. But if you had a larger designation for someone to apply for a specific part, so it would be a larger amount.
Am I right in saying that the application for Stockbridge that we all saw is identical to the one for Linux and for Great Barrington?
Yeah.
And a word processor
Yeah.
could just,
Like a college.
They could do them
common
all.
app.
They can hit, so I was thinking, why would they bother for $200? But if they're hitting 10 of them,
Yeah.
then it makes sense especially if someone's on the payroll or there anyway doing other work, then they could spend a half a day or a day doing the applications, click, and then they've got it from last year. It's sort of copy, paste, click.
how many applications did we get for Stockbridge people? We funded 5.
I
That's all we.
think that's
The
all we
individual?
got. I think we literally funded
All of the
yeah.
Stockbridge ones.
Were they
Yeah.
individual or just Stockbridge? Right.
So there were only 5
The Stockbridge
applications.
Or
Library,
Stockbridge
the
Board.
ice sculpture,
Yeah,
the Mary Pope literature,
The library.
the IS 183, that was the artist
Res-
residence.
Chesterwood.
Chesterwood
Yeah.
goals
Those all sound really good to me.
yeah, well, we funded all of them for $200.
Yeah, I know, that's the
And the
point.
Berkshire Wildlife
Right, happening at the library, right?
at the
Audubon.
library, right.
The library.
So I think that we were responsive to Stockbridge, but we just didn't get much. We didn't have that much opportunity.
Excuse
other
me.
way-
Rena, I
Yeah.
think wants to.
Yeah, first, I think Selena had her hand up before I did, but I'd love to
Oh.
get it after she does.
And I was just going to say that, 3 of those 5 were directly from the library, so super limited. And I just, to Joe's point, I think we could I don't know if we have the money to put together a mailer that went to, every Stockbridge resident, like what's available and what's out there. And, I'm surprised we didn't see anything. Did we do anything with the botanical garden?
Does
Not
anybody?
this year, I don't
I
think.
don't think
I
they
don't think
applied.
they put it-
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like reaching out to the local
Last year either.
organizations, but also just every resident of Stockbridge should know that it's out there.
I'm going to check with the post office if we could put a flyer in the, then it doesn't cost us anything.
Postcard.
Because if we get into addresses and money, then we probably don't have much.
We
Rena?
can make a designation. That's
Yeah.
something long-term we could think about, right?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that I was on the Stockbridge Cultural Council, I don't know, about 10 years ago, and we got some of the same applications. I mean, some of these things, the wildlife, everything else, they do this year after year, and they apply all around because they all say that, we're not just benefiting this town or that town and the other town, we're doing things that anybody can come to. So they've gotten into this rhythm, and that as we're all local people, it's very hard for us to say no to people we know who are applying or to something that, is going to benefit the town. So I think the rhythm has been these, multitude of small grants. And if we wanted to change that, I think we'd have to really address it in some public way. But I seem to recall when we were making the decisions together, it was very hard when some people were asking for $4,000 for something. We all looked at it like, oh my God, that's such a huge sum because that's pretty much all we have to give.
Mhm.
So, it's hard to take a real stand on a project with the amount of money we have to spend. And it's also hard to say no to people you may know, or, we all supported different organizations, and even though we were recusing ourselves on the vote, we were still, just by our being in the room and saying, yeah, I'm on the board of this or that, it's very hard to say no. So I think it's wonderful to talk about all this, but there would have to be like a system as well as potentially a concerted effort, both on the research and perhaps on raising more money. So.
Rena, on the point of the projects and the fact that we get the same ones every year, I don't remember which one, but one local cultural council says explicitly that they will only fund the same project for 3 years. I mean, I'm not saying we should do that, but I mean,
That type of thing. I think,
that's one way to address that issue. And maybe we only do that for non-Stockbridge.
but Rena, I think you bring up a good point, just to take it even one other point that you had made. If, as you go up in dollars or sort of down in the amount of applicants that you approve, you choose 3 for a larger amount or 10, the politics or the cost kind of goes up, where you chose those 5 and you left out these 15, that's sort of a little bit of like, you better have some answers. What's your system? What's your system for doing those choices? You get under a little more scrutiny for what your system of choices are, as opposed to if it's $200, and you say, well, we tried to get something to as many people as possible. You're looking, it's the easier political play, right? More democratic and.
I would also just like to say, I think in terms of the library, which has a very, very robust development team, that, they've asked for, look, they're not huge amounts. At the same time, do we have institutions, locally that ask for, 3 projects? Are they able to stand that project on its own 2 feet after 2 years of support? so that the burden, because they're very effective at presenting applications, at what point, I mean, and we'll take some understanding on our part of their resources, but, they're very organized. They also raise a ton of money. And at what point do we help them to stand out? Are we helping people launch and not just, not sustain, kind of, interminably?
Right. I mean, once you've been accepted once for a $200 grant or $250 grant, you're going to keep applying every year.
Yeah.
Because
right. That's
again,
what-
it's not too hard.
What happens.
It's not too hard, especially for those places like the library that has someone that can, with great skills, just write that application wouldn't take them 40 minutes,
Well, how do we feel about potential mechanisms to limit the number of grants that we make so that we can make them a little bit more juicy? I mean, it's a hard question, really. It's a hard
Also,
question.
raising money would be also
Yeah.
a combination
Yes.
of doing both of those.
And
at the same time.
yes, and I think we are going to be looking at that.
We could say we only want to give grants above $350. We could put it in a
Number.
dollar amount. And because that is more meaningful in terms of getting your project off.
So you're saying, I mean, that's not something we would say publicly. What you're saying is when we're all together and we're voting, we're going to have our own cutoff to make it meaningful.
I think you could say
I
it
think that's
publicly.
appealing.
I wouldn't be ashamed of it, but
How do you feel on the TV? That's kind of appealing, I think.
Yes, I feel like the focus should be on raising more money. And I noticed from the press releases from the other cultural councils that they asked the citizens, they had a fundraising effort for citizens to give money. I mean, that is certainly one source for us to add to the 5,000 or whatever it is from Mass Cultural Council. Requires outreach again, but I sort of prefer getting more money than saying that we won't give $200 to somebody who really benefit from $200.
I think we would all agree that we need more money and we need to try to do that. I have talked to, actually even on websites, the various local cultural council websites, some of them do post their meeting notes and you can see what they've done. And I've talked to a couple who've done fundraising and I think this is a largely new team, but I just feel like they have more of a groove, and they've been doing it for a while. And there are events that they do every summer that they participate in, and it's a fundraising event. So one of the things, this is not fun. So anyway, I think there are things we can do. Maybe we can do an op-ed begging people. I mean, that, or, an advertisement, get an article in the Berkshire Eagle or the Stockbridge update, really. But that's a little bit of a different kind of medium. The thing is about, for example, the Berkshire Eagle, that our timing is the same. All of these local cultural councils have the same timing. So they're granting at the same time. They're asking for applications at the same time. And I think the Berkshire Eagle, actually, I just noticed this, but I think that they printed our grants like a month later or something, because it's all the same, and they cover all of these towns and all these cultural councils, and it's the same article basically. So it's a little bit challenging unless we paid for it. If we paid for an ad, then we control it. But I'm a little bit sympathetic to the Berkshire Eagle, everybody wants their press release at the same time with the same names on it. It's kind of, quandary.
Talk about other possibilities, with the flyer, possibly via the post office, Carol Owens update. And I noticed some town, I can't remember which one, on the main page, when it shows various ways to pay for your taxes online, pay for whatever, and pay for their make a contribution to the cultural council. So it was very high visibility. I just think if we really put our minds to it, we would come up with ways to, and even,
Stockbridge is not the most up to date with its website, however.
neither are we, by the way, with our website on behalf of Stockbridge. So be careful.
So I think if you're going to start, if there is going to be, I should say, a fundraising effort of some sort, the way you could maybe get more attention when you actually put out the call for grants is if the fundraising is specifically so that when there are Stockbridge-based projects, there's more money in the pool for that, like for artists actually located in Stockbridge or doing a project actually in Stockbridge, as opposed to, the local institutions, which all have their own fundraising, the library at Chesterwood, Rockwell. So, I mean, that's a way to get publicity sort of at different times of year about what the council's trying to do. So you could still have some of the little grants that are really truly for some of the smaller organizations actually important to them when they go across 10 cultural councils, giving them their $200, they can actually do a program for all the kids, But, the idea if we could raise another few $1,000s and say, these will be for larger grants for Stockbridge-based projects, I think you might find there's some new projects happening in Stockbridge.
I love
I like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Good idea.
And defining the parameters of what it is to be a Stockbridge grant might be good. So whether that's living, tax, there's so many variables with what is considered a Stockbridge.
We do.
What is our criteria at this point?
Let me find
It's
that.
in Stockbridge or.
Yeah, we do actually say
Your
that.
home is, there's a whole bunch
Here.
of.
What if they only
Joe, applicants must reside in Berkshire County or have a strong organizational or individual presence in the county. Preference is given to projects that take place in Stockbridge or directly benefit Stockbridge residents. That is what we
What
say.
it is now, right? So if we
Yeah.
have a Stockbridge version of that, where we put more emphasis and more money toward a Stockbridge locality, we would probably want to define whether that's a, homeowner or is that,
Tell me.
well, there's people that reside in Stockbridge, there's people that work in Stockbridge but don't reside here, there's people that have secondary homes in Stockbridge but don't live here. As long as you have some
No.
association with Stockbridge at some level, is that?
No, it seems like if you should be a Stockbridge resident.
Resident, okay.
Yeah, and or an organization based in
But doesn't
Stockbridge.
it say it
Right,
takes
or a
place?
project that is really benefiting Stockbridge, a
Right.
sculpture
Stockbridge
down in
Trust.
Stockbridge, a concert that, something.
Happens
So
in
we have
Stockbridge.
to work out what that is, but, and then when you do the fundraiser, you can sort of say that this extra money will help, supplement, whatever.
All right, just in case we may want to edit the language that we're using now. So right now we say preference is given to projects that take place in Stockbridge or directly benefit Stockbridge residents. We don't actually say a Stockbridge artist, the primary person is Stockbridge,
So
or
you might want to say
Stockbridge
we
resident.
encourage applications from Stockbridge.
And this isn't. and let
Well,
me
we
clar-
shouldn't just say artists because.
Yeah, I don't want to, yeah.
If
Right.
we were to have a separate amount, and I'm not talking about in general, our language for Berkshire County in general.
Correct.
If we're the Stockbridge,
Cultural
Cultural.
Council.
what if we just gave grants to people in Stockbridge only?
Because there were only 5.
Then they'll each get
More than that.
a lot, I mean,
Because other people are doing things
That's a
that
good-
Stockbridgians go to, yeah.
yeah, that's true, but if you're trying to attract,
Right. I think we need to move there. Not exclusively, but But I think that's what we're trying to do. I think we all want to do that, right? We want to encourage more Stockbridge applicants and give them more money, give them preferential treatment, right? Because we are Stockbridge Cultural Council. So yeah, I think we're trying to go there.
Because looking at the previous list, I looked at, there were very sort of far off locations and so on.
Right.
But that doesn't seem really necessarily applicable.
But how do people feel about having two different designations in the monies that we would have? So you would have $4,000, sort of 2,000, it would be a smaller amount would go to all those people that continued to apply. And then there would be stuff that would be designated for just Stockbridge, as in the 5 applicants.
Yes, I think it's a really good idea. Because there are people who don't live in Stockbridge, but who implement something within Stockbridge that benefits people in Stockbridge. So there's both the person creating the program and the people who are benefiting from the program. And I don't think we should cut out either of them. But if we say everyone who fits into the category that we have can apply, and whatever fundraising we do within Stockbridge will go to Stockbridge beneficiaries, either residents or beneficiaries of the program, then that seems really fair and interesting.
But again,
But the amount
of the five people that we had from Stockbridge, as Selena pointed out, 3 of them were from the library.
Yeah, yeah.
That may be okay, maybe it's not okay. I mean, we're not.
It just is the way it
big and
is.
wide Audience.
It's just what developed over the course.
I think the language that you just read is pretty good because you're saying it has to take place in Stockbridge. And generally for the benefit of Stockbridge, once you say the person or persons or group has to be located in Stockbridge, then you may exclude some people who come like during summers or something like that, live elsewhere but want to do something in Stockbridge. So I don't see the need to qualify the residency.
All right, so because we are clear that there is we are clear already that there's a preference.
Right.
So, okay.
And it has to
That
be
makes sense.
here in Stockbridge for the residents of Stockbridge. So that to me is all we really need.
Okay, well, that's what we have, so we don't need to do more than on that. What about though just in terms of smoking out applications, the Stockbridge Cultural Council basically mimics, when they talk about where they would give money, when we talk about where we would give money, it mimics Mass Cultural Council. So it says to individuals and organizations for projects in the arts, science, humanities, interpretive sciences, or any combination, new and innovative projects are encouraged. That's the Mass Cultural Council language as well. Some of the other local cultural councils have modified it or enhanced it by saying history, one had history, one environmental sciences. So they've chosen to, get a little bit deeper to express their interest in supporting a particular area. I mean, does anyone feel like we need to do more of that in terms of what we say? I'm talking about, what we say.
The scope, seems like.
Well, the scope is very broad, except that who's going to know how broad it is? Because it's really very broad from what I read to you earlier. So, all right, so it sounds like we can kind of, stay with that for a while. But then the issue is going to be awareness, other ideas, more ideas for awareness building, smoking out people in Stockbridge or people who will do something within Stockbridge.
What about the annual town meeting? What about?
What do you want to do at it?
I was just thinking you could have flyers.
Oh,
at the annual
yeah.
Town meeting.
Or someone
Yeah.
can say something that's true.
Yeah.
There
I mean,
should be a
that's-
format for them, appropriate time for someone to talk that out, or put that out there. I was wondering if any of the other towns had anything with regards to matching grants. So part of a pitch to Stockbridge would be that if we raised money for exclusively for Stockbridge events and Stockbridge artists or art organizations, not part of our, what we get now, but in addition to what we have, would they, so that they would have, we'd have it written out, we would take place in Stockbridge, benefit Stockbridge, be part of Stockbridge. Is the town interested in talking through whether they would match some of those fundraising efforts that we would do in addition to where we are now?
And I think that's a good course to pursue. And in fact, again, reading other people's press releases, some towns do get money from their town. Some towns get a combination of money from the town and their residents, and some just get additional money through their own fundraising efforts. So there.
It's a mixed bag. So is anything go, right?
Yeah,
I was just
so,
thinking,
but,
I'm not going to hold my breath with Stockbridge and asking for money. I'm just saying that if you were to pitch it, it would, the
Right.
idea that it could be stronger if it's really localized instead of
Yeah, it's-
funding Berkshire South's, you know, a program that's happening in Great Barrington. It might be a little bit easier of a pitch.
Very good idea.
You have to get on the warrant if you're gonna, want the town to vote money and discuss it. So I don't know, that it might be too late for this year, so.
Yeah, I was just thinking the idea of how to get the town more on the town's radar as far as how they could help grow the arts in Stockbridge. That would be, I think, beneficial for both sides of the coin. And I don't think it would come at some huge, we're not going to be asking for $20,000, $30,000
No.
right now, so.
No.
We
Yeah.
could also, just even if we had a small poster that we could put in the post office, in the library, at Elm Street, in the coffee shop, at the bakery.
I talked to Barbara Zanetti from the Chamber of Commerce, and because I saw a notice about the art fair, which is the third weekend in August, and I thought maybe we could have a table. She suggested instead of that, that I guess the chamber has a table and we can actually give them flyers. And she told me that she could give us a list of the people participating who are local, and then we could actually go up to them and talk to them. And she also told me that they paid $275 in order for their booths. So, I mean, that's a grant opportunity right there for local artists, right? So I think that's something that we will definitely do. On your point again, another thing that we can do, and I think we all know this, but we haven't been in a position to do it, but if we got more money, we might be. The council has the ability to do its own project, and if we had additional money that wasn't even mass cultural money, then that money could also apply to a special event project or something. So I'm just going to throw out something I thought about, but just to, get everybody thinking about things that might be Stockbridge centric, which is our goal, and bring community together in the way that Mass Cultural Council wants us to do. So this was something I thought would be fun. I thought it would be kind of cool to include various institutions within Stockbridge. So for example, and include and encourage participation by Stockbridge residents. So for example, a photo exhibit at the Stockbridge Library, open mic poetry and music at the Lion's Den, maybe like famous speeches on the lawn of the Norman Rockwell Museum, where residents actually participate, but something that brings people together. Those are things we can think about. Selena?
Judith, I think those are such lovely ideas. And I wonder if it would make any sense to tie them to things where Stockbridge residents really turn out for, like the Memorial Day Parade, which is always really well attended, and there's that gathering at the end, but maybe there's a way to tie into things that are already happening. So it was something else that was happening in that same time frame, or during the holidays when, the Chamber of Commerce does the thing on Main Street. Like
Right.
maybe there are ways that we can, or, Halloween is a great, there are just those moments when we have stuff going on already that we could perhaps push out further.
Yeah, we'd have to coordinate with the organizers and figure out how we could kind of add to the event, is your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like, there is that lovely thing at the end of the Memorial Day parade, and they always invite, oh gosh, I can't try to remember if it's an 8th grader or a 10th grader. I can't remember when my son was asked to do it, to speak, to deliver one of the moments, but then there's like a little picnic, but maybe we have another tent, or maybe there's maybe it's also a time when we invite all Stockbridge residents to have a small, just town art show right there, just like a relatively impromptu, not juried, like, something that just gets everybody out, where there's no kind of bar to entry for it.
Okay. Other thoughts or on just stuff to get Stockbridge moving in this direction?
Well,
Yeah.
we could potentially take some of the money and invest it in creating an event that the Cultural Council actually owns that would also function as a fundraising event, but would be a cultural event. And I mean, that you would, as we're talking, I'm thinking, the Stockbridge, Muncie, Mohicans, have a heavier presence than they used to have here in the Berkshires. And they've always come and spoken at the library on an annual or semi-annual basis and like that. And what if we created a cultural event that the whole Berkshires has never had before, working with the Stockbridge Muncies on a history and culture event in the streets of Stockbridge in the summer, and that and there'd be either we're selling things at booths, or there'd be some way you could donate, and some of the money would go to the Stockbridge Muncie community and some to the Cultural Council for future events, and ultimately build up that way, and also help people understand what the Cultural Council could do if it was appropriately funded.
Okay.
Yeah, those are all good ideas, I think.
Yeah.
I was envisioning some sort of, we have a lot of visual artists, there's musicians. You could do one of those auctions where you get each person to donate some version of what they could withstand giving away, and people want to purchase something, and that could happen at that event. So you'd have a gallery room, and where that would be, maybe you have it at one of these local central areas where everyone's going to be. Back to Selena's point, piggybacking on whether it's at the library or at Chesterwood or Norman Rockwell, something like that. You would think, how is that going to work for an auction? But an auction could raise money. But if you do have a whole event, you could do even more with food, music, and it can be a thing. That's what it could grow into. But that's good. There's a certain amount of cost into that. There can be a lot of volunteers, but there's probably a certain amount of organization and cost to that. Whether you pull that money out of the original amount, that's a different thing, or you work toward that for next year or something, and you fundraise all the way to get to that point. I like the idea of trying to get Stockbridge at least paying attention to sort of matching or sort of the idea that they're going to work with us, and therefore it's an investment, for Stockbridge, and this is our plan. So it's kind of like a business proposal, I suppose.
Well, for publication, what about maybe a table at the farmer's market, or
Could
just
do
a
that.
lot of people, just where a lot of people go.
Stockbridge doesn't have a farmer's market.
Oh, they used to. Sorry.
But I think that brings up, what's the message?
Yeah, that's what I was.
That's the Lennox Farmer's Market. Yeah.
That's right.
But revisiting back,
Stockbridge, Great Barrington. I mean, there are 3 farmers markets that Stockbridgians shop.
Yeah, I mean, it's so close, but that, it could be the Lennox Farmers Market.
And the message would be what exactly that we would be
Just that.
putting out there,
Exist.
that we
Yeah.
exist
Yeah.
and or.
Yeah, I just said because there's a Lennox Cultural Council, so it might be kind of weird. And there's a West Stockbridge Farmers Market, but there's no Stockbridge.
So change.
So I think there may be a lot of other options. Yeah, I just think that if we're
I
going
think
to
what else is.
do it, we should promote it within the town of
So it's
Stockbridge.
informational, it's not necessarily immediately on the front face sort of fundraising, big push, this is the goal. It's more like this is information about what we do and here's what we've done and that kind of thing, or is it a fundraising moment too? Signing up,
I
collecting
think
names?
it's more this is what we're looking for, apply. I think it's smoking out people to
Outreach.
apply, yeah, outreach.
I
Yeah,
think it really could be all of the above, an opening, whatever, a couple sentences about what the Stockbridge Cultural Council is and does, then a section on applications, and then a section on fundraising. And that could certainly be on one page.
yeah, good, good. Okay, any other thoughts on this? All right. Well, that was a lot of good ideas. I did want to ask for a couple people to do, I don't think we need a meeting on outreach and flyers and stuff, but it'd be good to have, a small little group work on it later in the summer, obviously before the applications are due. So would anyone like to participate with me on that? A couple people? Want to? All right, you're creative. Anybody else interested? Okay, we'll just work out some outreach and flyers and just kind of, get that in motion later in the summer, I would think. Okay. Then I wanted to go to the next topic, which was what I'm calling process improvement, which is just like how we voted. We've talked actually, and we can recircle back to part of this, but in terms of the allocation of money. But I just want to check that everyone was comfortable with the way we voted, where everybody kind of did their homework in advance and then came to the meeting with your own decision on what you wanted to approve or decline. Was everybody kind of okay with that? Do you have ideas for doing it better?
I think it would be better if we were in person.
Yeah.
I agree. I
I
agree.
find it a little stilted, hard to communicate, I should say.
Yeah. I certainly agree with that. All those roll calls, believe me, I could definitely do without those. Although if you do a hybrid meeting and someone's on Zoom, you have to do that anyway. So you don't. Any other thoughts on that?
I thought it was good in general, that everybody did their work, everyone was prepared, we had constructive conversations, and we didn't need to belabor the ones where we were all in agreement. So as a general process, aside from hybrid, in-person, whatever, I thought it was good.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Everybody okay? All right. Then in terms of the allocation of funds, this is one thing I wanted to propose that's a slight variation on what we've discussed about focusing on Stockbridge, which we definitely want to do. But one of the things that occurred to me after the meeting was that we had that average of 250, and when we had the maybes, so they were on the cusp of being approved or declined, if we decided to approve it, they still got as much money, generally speaking, as, the Stockbridge things or the things that we all supported. So I think in the future, I at least would like to see some differentiation. So if it was a maybe and then it got flipped to an approve, they should get less than the one that got 7 of our votes, because, the majority of us were very supportive of the project. So does that make sense to people?
But That only makes sense because the only reason that happened is because we set the limit. Like everybody's going to get at least $250. So I think it's a good point, Judith, and maybe, the people that were on the fence maybe get less, but if you have a threshold set, that's what people are going to get.
Okay. Yeah, Barbara?
I think just one other maybe minor clarification. There were some cases, I know for myself and I think for others as well, where the maybe was because there was a question. Is this actually taking place in Stockbridge, or is the date right, or has it been changed, or things like that. And once clarified, then that for me then made it clearer whether I wanted to move from a no to a no or to a yes. And so I just think we have to be careful about all maybes being lower than all yeses.
Okay, and Rena?
Yeah, I feel very uncomfortable with making a blanket statement like that. I still think we should just be examining everything on its own merits. And as far as Barbara just said, that if, it depends on the reason, it was a maybe, so.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
I wonder if maybe there's like a threshold for a unanimous votes, and then.
Could be that.
And then you don't have a threshold sort of for votes that aren't unanimous?
Right. Pending the answer of all
Yeah.
questions, someone's allowed, obviously, if they have a question before they vote, and then it's a simple answer, that might be, then they would vote unanimously. Whereas if the vote comes first, they're holding back their vote because they're not sure of the information about this.
Well, I mean,
Right, but
for the final vote, what I'm talking
Final
about,
vote.
because even if like with maybes, so you can come back and some people may decide that they're going to go for a yes, but other people may decide for a no. And even in things that aren't maybes, we had votes where, not the majority voted in favor, so we approved it, but it wasn't a unanimous vote.
Unanimous.
So I'm just
There's
another
room there.
Well,
way to think about it.
I think that makes sense, right? I mean, that's kind of just a different way to approach it, but if there's full support, whatever that means, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, then they get blessed differently. Okay, so any other comments on the process, the allocation of money, the voting? Everybody okay with doing that? Okay. Next. Actually, we already talked about, a potential project, which, we're not in a position to do right now anyway, but just to be thinking about that. And when we have some money and we can actually do it, we can get together again and think more concretely about how we would pursue a cultural council project. And then the outreach, I have a partner. So we'll just get some, some basic flyers out. And we'll do that in a few months. We don't need to do that for a while.
As a community, like a bulletin board.
I can help with the I can help with the distribution of a
Well,
bunch.
Joe, you're creative too, right? You're an artist. Right, we got two creative people at least, probably others, I just don't know. All right, Joe, you've just been drafted.
We'll see about
To the
that.
minutes.
Is there anything, since we have this time, is there anything anyone would like to discuss? Are we kind of feeling like we're all on board? Everybody okay? All right, then I think we can conclude the meeting. Thank you all for your participation. And that will conclude our April 6, 2022 Stockbridge Cultural Council meeting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.